the title is Gender Inclusion in the designing and implementation of multi-stakeholder platforms in Zambia. And this is part of the work that we have also been collaborating with other researchers. There are a number of people who want to look at this particular element across different resources and across different scales as well. So we worked as part of the consultative group on international agricultural research task team, which is looking at multi-stakeholder platforms. Some call them dialogues. And so we have been working, you will see that we worked quite a lot with IFPRI, and we also worked with CIFO, CIFO ICRAF. We have also been involved in this, looking at multi-stakeholder platform within their own context, and then sharing and drawing common threads. I'll just outline my presentation is organized as follows. I'll just do a brief introduction, and then I'll look at the multi-stakeholder platform overview. What are some of the principles for implementation? And then I'll briefly reflect on the stakeholders. And then I will then also look at preliminary reflections, as most of you might be aware. I don't know if you can now see it again.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this is how I've organized it: introduction, overview, principles of implementation, stakeholders, preliminary reflections, as this is still ongoing work, and then some conclusions. Okay. So what is an MSP? The way we have defined multi-stakeholder platforms, we say MSPs are not about organizations. This is just to reflect, for us, the way we are seeing it, we see these as being about people, and they are about organizations only as far as organizations can serve the needs of people. And here, in our specific case, we are looking at poor and vulnerable children and women and men. This, for us, I think it underpins even the need for us to understand either institutions, organizations, where we are looking at that. The main purpose from the perspective from where we are sitting is that we are looking at those as mechanisms which are supposed to put people in a better position than they were in. In other words, institutions, organizations are supposed to serve the interests of the people rather than people serving the interest of organizations or institutions. So this is where I'm coming from. And one of the focus that we sort of, as part of the team that I was talking about, we are looking at how do we look at research, which then leads to impact. So we are looking at more of applied research in the context of resilient agri-food food system. So multi-stakeholder platform, you see that some people refer to them as initiatives, some refer to them as forums. So we try to be as broad as possible, because even within the group, some talk about them as dialogues, but we are speaking about the same thing. And for us, this is a purposefully organized interactive processes that bring together stakeholders to participate in dialogue, decision-making, and or implementation regarding actions seeking to address a challenge or a problem they hold in common, or to achieve a goal for their common benefit. So it's about how do we come together in order to resolve a particular challenge. I'll give maybe a little bit of context in terms of what we are working on as well, maybe a little bit later. And it is an opportunity to facilitate inclusive governance. And if you are looking at inclusive governance, we are bringing the diverse stakeholders whose interests might be competing. But how do you then craft rules which are in the interest of everyone, and which also compromise in some elements? And once you start looking at that, you would see that the importance of gender, equality, and social inclusion then becomes key, as it ensures equitable participation and sustainable outcomes. The context of the place that we are looking at is actually Zambia in the Lower Kafue Basin. The Lower Kafue Basin is the part, for those who are familiar with Zambia, it starts off soon after the capital of Lusaka, going southwards up to joining to the Kariba, which then joins and becomes part of the Zambezi. So it is for us very critical landscape facing resource management challenges. There are so many challenges, there are so many interests, there are so many sort of competing interests within this region, which most people are trying to address. Okay, so what are the MSPs in terms of an overview? These are meaningfully engaging for us, especially because we are looking specifically on the aspect of gender. We are meaningfully engaging women in accessing and controlling benefits from agriculture. If you see what the FAO and other sort of studies on gender at a global level, they have actually said that if you look at the progress that is being made at the moment, we are most likely not going to achieve gender parity, not in our lifetime. And some even stipulate that it can be over even over 100 years that we are going to get gender parity. So how do we ensure that in some of the interventions through multi-stakeholder platforms, we are also taking into account gender equality and social inclusion? The multi-stakeholder platform aim to ensure that there is a discussion of challenges facing communities within the different landscapes and how solutions are crafted to address the challenges through practical development interventions. Here we would want, we keep on reflecting on saying, who is facing this particular challenge? Can we further sort of interrogate that so that we identify, is it specifically for the youth? Is it for men or women? Is it for the business interests? Is it for the hydroelectric power companies? So there are quite a number of stakeholders within this particular basin. And for multi-stakeholder platforms, we would want to see how gender equality and social inclusion can be made intentional by including women youth in the processes. In most cases, people speak, I've heard a number of organizations, a number of settings where they say, we are addressing gender, but there is no intentionality and even actual processes and follow-up to ensure that what they are saying is broader policies are actually being implemented in practice. And through the MSPs, we thought that it also offers an opportunity for monitoring and critiquing through the process documentation, which we are conducting. In that, if we are looking at meetings, for example, the dialogues, what is the role of women? What exactly are they doing? And we do have students who are also part of that exercise. They will be documenting the experiences. What are the women saying? Are those the contributions? Are they being taken into account? And then also interviewing them after those events to say, what did you say? How did you learn? How did you see your suggestions and inputs being included in that particular discussion? And were they part of the finally agreed resolutions? And then the documentation goes beyond inclusion and to document the process and outcomes as a result of women's and youth inclusion. We are also situating MSPs within the broader CGIARC MSPs community of practice to draw further common threads across different contexts, different resources, and across different scales. This is what I was highlighting at the beginning, that we are working across different centers and sister organizations who are looking at the same thing, but in different contexts, but identifying what are the common threads that are important for everyone, so that we can then synthesize those findings. Okay. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Yes. Now it's moving. At one time, I thought it was stuck. And then we also looking at multi-stakeholder platforms as learning platforms where we catalyze at the national and subnational level the evidence to include integrated systems into project design and policies. Here, what we are looking at are the various elements, whether it's water, energy, food. So what we are trying, and the environment. So here is actually an opportunity through the multi-stakeholder platforms to have this nexus thinking, but not just the nexus thinking, but also the nexus application, where you are looking at development in much more holistic terms, where we are not just focusing on one particular element, but you are taking into account that human beings, when they are looking at development, they go beyond our own disciplinary interests and they have resources, assets which cut across one particular area. So in this way, we think that the MSPs are actually bringing an opportunity in that direction, which brings different disciplines, different interests, which is much more reflective of what society and farmers experience in their lives. How are we meaningfully engaging women in sustainable development? what we have done is that we started by doing what we're calling a current situation assessment, where we looked at efforts which are leading to increased awareness and opportunities. We also looked at the recognition of existing social and cultural barriers, which, in order to spare targeted interventions. Once you start talking about gender, you already talking about culture. You are talking about norms. We know that norms change, but most people, when they portray them, when they are talking about norms, they want to assume they speak as if they are cast in stone. But if you look over time, the culture, norms itself, they change over time. They are always evolving. So we have been bringing into discussion here, bringing even traditional leaders within this particular area as well. And one of the female traditional leaders is one of our champions within this particular community to help and advocate for changes and transformation in terms of norms, which enable women and youth to have access to land, for example. And then we were also identifying certain interventions where women could also be role models in terms of different agricultural interventions. I will not go maybe into the details. Some of the things that we have even done is to have television programs where we showcase and demonstrate women who are successful farmers as demonstrating what they are doing from right from the beginning of the farming season up to the end, so that people would also start seeing, in order to change those norms and perceptions, they start seeing a woman as a farmer, and that would also help in reshaping and reconfiguring the culture and the norms as well. Some of the challenges, of course, are structural inequalities and deep-rooted norms. There are power imbalances which are still present, but deliberate efforts are being made to change this, and these are underway. There are a number of ways that we are trying to make this, and we have also been working with the local broadcaster as well, and they have been doing outreaches, and part of the outreaches would also go with the broadcaster, going with cultural dance clubs and drama clubs, where they sort of act some of the social challenges, the norms and the hindrances that women face as a result of that. After those dramas, we then come into discussion to say, these are the issues coming. What do you see as the solutions? So it's not just about drama, but drama to inform and help transform and start dialogues which would help to change some of the norms and cultural practice. And in terms of perspectives, we do appreciate that years are required, but for us, one thing that we realize that if you say years are required and then sit back, already you are not helping, but start doing something, start taking some few steps now and see how changes and how some societies are being transformed from what we have seen from the television program, the dramas, the radio programs, as well as the acting drama, and then the discussions after that. We see that people are being changed, the mindsets are being changed, and we're also working through schools as well. And then what are some of the principles that we are looking at is issue of co-ownership of development of outcomes. Women and youths are part of development. I was speaking to Lavanya at the beginning, maybe before some of you joined, is that sometimes when we talk about women and especially youth, we speak as if they are going to happen sometime in the future, but they're experiencing the challenges right now. How do we bring in their innovations, whether even in terms of technology and some of their solutions as well? And we have seen that this is a good forum for genuine dialogue, where we identify the gender and power dynamics, but not only do we identify them, but through facilitation processes, we want to make sure that those are addressed and as much as possible facilitate the process to make sure that women and youth voices are also not just heard, but they contribute to the solutions within the local forum. And there's also been a lot of gender knowledge exchange as well, where we have done a lot of capacity and also exchange mechanisms across the different communities, and also with women getting a number of positions. And we have even asked some of the women, one of the women we even funded here to take part within one of the COP events. That was the one in Sharm el-Sheikh, to sort of bring the voices from the ground, so that she is now a role model, and she has even been able to get other women are sort of getting other positions as a result of that. we want co-creation of knowledge, and we are talking about whether it's indigenous knowledge systems or the local knowledge systems that the women have, the men and the youths. We want to co-create. We don't want knowledge systems which is based or biased or based on maybe what the old men know without including the women and youths. Once you engage them, I think that sort of joint learning process across different stakeholders is one of the key elements. Here, I'll show you some of the different stakeholders where you see that there are unequal power dynamics, and you want to make sure that through facilitation, we have everyone contributing. We don't want maybe the smallholder farmers and the women to keep quiet because they are seated in the same venue with somebody, a bigger organization. So it's one thing that we have been trying to do. We have also been having, as part of the MSP, facilitating capacity development and why gender matters, why they need to understand gender as part of the MSP. One of the things that we have always been speaking, I think, as part of the MSP, is that you're actually better off together. When no stakeholder is left behind, you are better off, so that in the end, everyone would lose. It's not a zero-sum game. And how should gender be incorporated? For us, we think that integration has to be from the design to outcomes. Here we are talking about inclusive design. We embed GESI or gender equality and social inclusion. We co-create with indigenous knowledge, men, women, and youth. And here we started off by defining the actual rules governing the MSP. This was a participatory process. We didn't come up with any rules, but it was through these dialogues. Then they identify what are the rules, how do we want to work. So it's almost like crafting their own rules, and to ensure that the rules are not just crafted by those who are powerful. And we created a safe space, which is an inclusive space, to ensure that we have everyone contributing. And there was equal participation. And through facilitation process, at the beginning, it was an uphill task. And even some of the farmers, sometimes they didn't want to speak, but when we are facilitating, we also ask people to speak in their own languages. We do have translators so that they can also help in translation, so that you are not forced to say something which you don't mean just because you are using a language which is not which you are not familiar to. We support joint learning, and we empowering women and youth. And for the sustainable outcomes, we ensure legitimacy through inclusive and equitable decision making. And we build resilience by integrating diverse knowledge and different needs as well. And one of the key things that came out is the issue of fostering trust and long-term commitment among stakeholders. These are different stakeholders. I'll show you maybe later on to see the actual stakeholders that are out, so that you see that some of them might have thought to themselves, oh, we are actually much better off than the farmers, so we shouldn't be listening to what they are saying. So let me just go to the next. So this is basically summing up some of the things that I was talking about, inclusivity in design. So it has to be done right from the beginning. It's not something that you do after you have already started, right from the beginning. And in each and every meeting, we try to highlight it, that, and the equity in participation and contributions as well. You just don't want to have maybe those who are powerful speaking. So we intentionally ensure that we would want to make sure that all the participants are also speaking. And this, we think, will result in sustainability of outcomes, because there are a number of instances based on past experiences where we had decisions being made, but with the farmers who are quiet, but maybe whispering to each other that, oh, it will not go anywhere because they're not part of it. And at the end of, in one particular case, which was in one other country, you would see that the farmers were even clapping for the politician who was coming up with a new innovation. But whilst at the same time, they were whispering that this will not end as soon as they leave, we will not do anything about it. So we want local ownership so that there's sustainability. So just to give you an idea of who are some of the stakeholders that I'm talking about, you have the smallholder farmers, you do have the women, like this particular woman was part of, as I was saying, we're also supporting some small scale women production, and she was doing gardening. She was also diversifying, going into livestock, small livestock, and also chickens as well. And then there are also big sugar companies. Some of the two biggest sugar companies are based in this particular area. And they also interested in water from the Kafue. And it's the same water that the farmers would also want to have. It's also, for those who might be familiar with the lower Kafue. It's also the third top to the right. That's it's showing livestock, but if you look carefully, there's also wildlife as well. So there's a Lokinva Game Park, which is part of this as well. So there's also competing interests. This is one of the highest areas with the highest concentration of livestock as well. But that's where you also have wildlife as well in the game park as well. So these are already, how do you then decide what to do when and where, and how do you sort of make the trade-offs across the different land uses as well? It's also one area where there is some serious aquatic agricultural, aquatic farming, but there's also sort of capture fisheries as well. And so all those sort of almost some of the challenges that people experience as well. And there is also one of the hydroelectric powers owned by the Zambia Electric Supply Company, ZESCO. And this is part of, as we were bringing the stakeholders together. So we were discussing to them, familiarizing with their operations, but also getting them to contribute and participate as part of this, as part of the MSP as well. And then the last one to the bottom right, it's not clear here. It's part of, this is part of the game park. But what you see here, one of the richest men in Africa, Dangote, he is doing what he calls friendly mining within the game park in order to produce cement and so forth. So you would see that, and he calls it environmentally friendly. But if you look at it, there's nothing environmentally friendly about it. So how do you bring all these stakeholders with diverse and competing interests together? And he's not the only one. In his case, he's mining in the game park, but outside there's a lot of mining that is taking place. So I'll quickly then go on the reflections. I see that I have a few minutes, maybe less than 10 minutes left. But what are some of the reflections that I wanted to highlight on this? As I said, we have established a gender intentional functional multi-stakeholder platform for the Lower Kafue Basin. We officially launched it on 3 October 2023. But this was the launch. But prior to that, I mentioned that we were doing some consultation where communities were defining the rules, defining how they want to come together. So we started off almost 2 years before with this consultation process to ensure that we do have something which is owned, developed by the communities or the different stakeholders. And the appropriate communication and coordination tools and channels are established among all the stakeholders. So they do have their own communication mechanisms in place in order to share the experiences as well. And we have created a space for diverse stakeholder engagement, including marginalized groups. Yes, I'm saying we created space, but I don't want to claim that this is a perfect space. It's always evolving, and you want to make sure that those who are powerful, as you go on in future meetings, you still maintain the sort of the interest of the marginalized groups, because if things change, there are opportunities that things could be manipulated by those who are powerful. And progress has been made in mainstreaming gender and social inclusion into MSP activities. But we have also faced challenges, and some of the challenges we have addressed. For instance, issues like language barriers. We have made sure that there are translation facilities. We don't want people to speak in the language which they are not comfortable in, so that they might end up not expressing themselves very well or just keeping quiet. And one of the challenges that we are also still trying to grapple with is the issue of underrepresentation as well. We want to make sure that the numbers, not just the numbers of women, but also their contributions within these MSPs. And the issue of power imbalances. The powerful will always try to use all mechanisms to make sure that they undermine those who are less powerful. It's something that needs to be, you don't say we have achieved power balance, but it's something that you need to be aware of in each and every step of the way. And there's also efficient conflict resolution mechanisms which have been established. There were a number of cases which we had to help resolve in terms of conflicts within the MSP. And then there's also increased basket of benefits being shared equitably in the Lower Kafue. One of the things that we have done is that we had a suite of development interventions identified, because one of the things that the MSP is doing is they are identifying areas of development that they are interested in. So instead of just speaking about it and saying we're then going to look for other resources, we provided about USD 60,000 as some seed fund to help them start some projects which they think are relevant, which they've identified as a result of these discussions, which they think they are key. We also, in the process, we have actually engaged Zambia breweries. Zambia breweries, they have what they call the corporate social responsibility, because they get most of their water and most of their input from this particular area. So they do have funds which they've set aside as part of corporate social responsibility. So we are in discussions with them so that some of that funds would go through the MSP to help some of the identified development interventions. We're also discussing with Kafue Sugar and Zesco, which is the electricity company, who are also part of the MSP itself as well, to ensure that in terms of sustainability, people don't just talk, but they talk and see some of their decisions coming into play and being implemented. We also have seen that it is possible to engage women, youths, and vulnerable in the designing, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. We call it evaluation and reflection of the MSPs, so that you don't want to say we have gone this far, but keep on reflecting to see what are some of the things that you need to improve. And then such engagement needs to be intentional and must invest time and resources in ensuring that participation goes beyond attendance. So let me just quickly wind up. I think I'm left with one. Must invest in resources in ensuring that participation goes beyond attendance to informing and influencing the priorities, and even going further to ensure those priorities are implemented and reflected upon. One of the things that we have also done as a result of this, DEM operational rules and early warning systems have been sort of communicated to ensure that, because in the past, the dams were just being operated by the electricity company without informing people, having livestock flooded and people even losing their lives. But now they are sort of looking at a warning system. Upstream, downstream linkages through PEAS, corporate social responsibility, and gender-specific interventions such as aquaculture for women groups, as well, as I've mentioned. In conclusion, in the last minute, I think you had said 42, it's now coming 42. Maybe one of the things that we have learned is that MSP's participation is not absolute. It is fluid, and we see it as being created, as being challenged, modified, negotiated. It's being reconfigured. So there's the importance of facilitated stakeholder engagement. You don't stop facilitating to say that we have achieved our end goal. It's always evolving. And we also see it as an arena where patriarchal norms are being challenged and being reconfigured through engaging traditional leaders and through the different things that we are doing in terms of engaging the communities to reflect and make changes themselves. It's not, when it comes to norms and cultural practices, you don't tell people that this is what you need to change, but let them go through what the implications of this, and then they reflect and then identify what are the mechanisms they need to change. We're also moving away from the stereotypes where you are looking at binary powerful and less powerful, men and women. Here we are looking at more a nuanced intersectional gradient perspective where you want to understand the nuances in terms of power, stereotypes, power inequalities. And this almost reminds me of what I think was written, I think, during the French Revolution, where they said, I participate, you participate, he participates. And then I think the French by then, in the 1789 revolution, they were not even talking about women by then, but then added she participates, we participate. And then in the end, they are controlling. You are bringing people, they are discussing in the MSPs, but to what end is their participation?